Welcome to Alexandrians with Dani Karim, where I interview authors, both living and dead ones, with the power of AI. Today's guest is Dr. Chase Cunningham, also known to many as Dr. Zero Trust. He is the world-leading expert on cybersecurity, also an international best-selling author, and one of the leading architects behind the Zero Trust model that's currently reshaping how nations, companies, and individuals defend themselves in the digital age. He also wrote the book Cyber Warfare: Truth, Tactics, and Strategies, and the leadership book How Not to Lead, in which we also talk in detail in our dialogue. In this conversational adventure, we explore his journey from military to thought leader in his field. We also talk about the psychology of trust, why the internet is a dark iceberg. We talk about cyber warfare and what it can teach us about human nature, leadership, and truth. I hope you find this episode educative and interesting. And if it resonates with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with other sovereign thinkers who believe in building a more secure and conscious world. Thanks for tuning in. Chase, so happy to have you on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Well, when a guy with a moniker like you asks me to jump on something, I will. You know what I mean? So,
It's been an honor. It was very hard for me to read through all your credentials, but I would like to start with a very simple questions. What's the story behind your name?
oh, the Dr. Zero Trust thing started out as a joke, honestly. So I was working at Forrester, and I mean, I finished my computer science doctorate, back 2014, 2015 time, and I was doing so much zero trust work. One of my friends, Becca Chambers, great lady, she was like, "You should get a doctorate in zero trust." Ha ha ha. And then I actually was messing around and sent an email with a picture of me with like doctor, thing and zero trust underneath it, and that turned into a thing. And I was just like, you know what? Screw it. If this is the brand that people want to associate with me, fine, whatever. Like it's better than like Doctor Asshole or something like that. So.
Also would not be the worst name. I recently rewatched the movie. I'm in Berlin here, and everybody's like me dressing kind of blackish, like the movie Matrix. It's kind of like a vibe. I don't know why Berliners tend to celebrate their individuality by all dressing the same, which is black, which is a strange thing. But there was one scene where Morpheus pretty much like offers people to either stay in illusion or um, go into the rabbit hole.
Red pill or blue pill, right?
Red pill or blue pill. What was your wake up moment that you started to question things in regards to maybe one of the earliest chapters of your journey where you woke up or your sense of awakeness woke up? If that question makes any sense to you.
No, that makes tons of sense because I think for me, like the wake up, I would say is still going on. I mean, I would say I'm not unplugged from the matrix, just like most of us aren't. I've still got some plugs in my spine and brain that are still jacked into the system because I mean, I'm still on the digital thing. Like I understand just the asinine nature of the fact that I use a digital platform to try and talk about, the risks of digital platforms. But I've just become more disenchanted, honestly, with the way that the cybersecurity market is built and structured and all the stuff that goes on. And when I wrote my book on cyber warfare, all the research I did for it, that for me was one of those aha moments of like, oh, like this is what's actually going on. There's the cursory level up here, and then there's 10 miles of other stuff underneath it that's really concerning. And that, I mean, I don't know about your opinion, but for me, I think in today's world, especially since I have kids, like the human right we all forget about to me is everyone should have the human right fundamentally to be safe and secure online. And that's not how things are built. That's not the way that we operate, and it's unfair, and it kind of pisses me off. So for me, like I feel like if I can make any little bit of contribution for that, for people to be better, to be more safe and secure, then I'm doing something that actually matters.
without kissing your ass, I think you're one of the most important voices in the world on this topic, particularly because it's actually the topic of our time. And my opinion is my last podcast guest, not my last podcast guest, a dear friend, Alex Jacqueline said something very interesting about this. He invented the JPEG and PNG. He's part of the reason why we can communicate in the way we are doing. And his technology has impacted billions. And he quoted an old American president, which is like, I study warfare so that my son can study mathematics, and their son
Yeah, it's a great one.
can study arts and literatures again. You picked a particular topic, which is how did this come about that you started to think also about the more serious or darker parts of this world and the emerging new world that we seem to be building?
Yeah, I mean, because I'm come out of the military and I was at the NSA and worked with other agencies, like I've seen things that I mean, I'll go to my grave with stuff that I can never talk about, which for me was very, even though I can't talk about it, like it was very eye-opening to be like, oh shit, this is what's going on at the operational level, nationally. And to see the way that the battlefield, I guess you could call it, the digital battle space has been so fundamentally leveled with, cyber and digitization and leaks and all those things. I mean, it concerns me as a father and as a person on planet Earth that like everyone everywhere potentially has access to nation state level capabilities, and we're really in a very risky place. I mean, it's not cinematic or Hollywood or bullshit to tell somebody like flat out like some idiot at home could potentially kick off digital conflict if they hit the wrong thing the wrong way. And I always remind people too, like cyberspace, and this is from having sat in the chair doing ops stuff, like cyberspace is the ultimate level playing field for everybody. North Korea's there, the French are there, we're there, Russia's there, blah, blah, blah. But you also have to remember there's no status of forces agreement in cyber. There's no Geneva Convention. And the reason for that is because every nation on the planet knows this is the one spot you can get away with and do whatever you want. And there's really very little risk and much less limitation.
How did you end up picking the military as a path for you onwards?
So, yeah, so I grew up in Texas on a cattle ranch, a little ranch south of Dallas. My parents, we had cows and pecans and pigs and stuff like that. And I was one of those kids where when I was getting ready to come out of high school, I was terrified of like, oh God, I see people that never leave this little podunk town that I live in. And I was like, I swear, literally like afraid I was going to get stuck there for the rest of my life. And the height of my existence on planet Earth would have been like working at Walmart or something. And the Navy just happened to be, hey, you can go the world, go see the world, go do cool things, go join the military, etc. And I was like, whatever I got to do to get the hell out of here, I'm doing it. I literally made my parents sign the papers at 17 to get me in the military so I could leave.
So it was driven not by a lust for learning more, but for adventure and exploration, so to say.
To
And
get off the farm. That's what it
get off
was.
the get off the farm. What was your first? I am very interested in how men become men, and then one of the things I often found is the leaving of the known, the as an initiation ritual into the next stage of maturation in a way. What was your first moment where you came to age in regards to your own development, this so to say?
I mean, I think I still have the image in my mind of the first time when I was on board the Cape St. George and we deployed for, I think it was like 7 months. And I can still, if I close my eyes and think about it, I can see us pulling away from the pier and the space getting so much larger and larger and larger as the ship moves away from the pier. And I remember the sinking feeling in my gut of, oh shit, it just got real. Like I've been through boot camp and training and all that stuff and firefighting school and no, whatever else. And mom and dad are not here. I'm 18 years old. I'm a nobody. Like I'm just a peon on the ship. And I just remember that moment of like Man, it's sink or swim now. Like you are in it, you're on it, and the ship ain't coming back.
The ship ain't coming back. What would you say is like one of the prevalent lessons you learned about in that time about yourself, about life, or what was like a big shift that happened inside of you?
I mean, I think for me, what I learned the most about, especially when I was young in the military, especially in the Navy, was the the value that actually is provided by getting outside of your comfort zone and by meeting people that don't look like you, don't come from where you came from, don't eat the same food, don't think the way that you do. Because I grew up, like I said, I grew up in a town, our population for the whole town was 230 something people. And everybody's looked like me. They were just, white folk that did country stuff. And then I got in the military and I'm like, oh man, there's guys here from like LA and all over the United States, some people from all over the world. And then pulling into foreign ports and getting to really experience things, it was, I mean, mind blowing. And then you really realize like, wow, my world has been this big, and now I get to be part of all this other. And you do get so much benefit from working with people that aren't like you, that don't. And I mean, to be perfectly frank, like I grew up in not my parents, but I grew up in a part of Texas where I would say that it's pretty close-minded and pretty racist where I grew up. And then I go out there and I realize like, whoa, all the stuff that I'd kind of learned growing up, it's not exactly true. It's just people are people and life is life and there's good folks and bad folks and that just is what it is. It doesn't matter who they are or where they came from.
There's a German word I like. It's called Fernweh. Fernweh is the pain you feel when you're lusting for an adventure or something is down the horizon. And Hamburg, where I'm from, is a port city too. Sometimes American warships even would come there, and we have a big prostitution streets in
Red light district, yeah.
a big rush like that's the right name. And the Beatles were formed there, so it's kind of a city where we always had like people from the outside come and party. But I sometimes remember sitting at the port there and just seeing those ships drive over into the horizon. It was always very beautiful to me. The sense of a physical adventure. Now it seems that we are somewhat losing that, and people are just sitting in front of their computers and engaging in exploration, particularly cerebrally. What do you make of that trend and how you grew up and this very physical experience in regards to how your kids are growing up, for instance, right now?
Yeah, I mean the COVID totally screwed up this next generation for for a bunch of reasons. And I mean I've got four kids. The it made people very withdrawn. It made them get comfortable at home, and it made them where the outside world is scary and dangerous. And they're there's a whole bunch of also economic things and whatever else that have kind of fallen off on the back end of that. But I mean, you see people now that are 30 years old living with their parents, and they're not even thinking about going out and kind of getting out on their own. Like for me, that's still like I'm terrified for my kids that they won't see the world. I make it a point, actually. We stopped as a family a few years ago. I don't do birthday or Christmas presents anymore. Every year I let the kids pick somewhere on the map and we go there. And it can be Japan, it could be Belize, it could be we went to Iceland last year. But they get out there and they go see things and learn stuff. And that they never ever once could tell me what they got for Christmas, but they always can tell me about the times they had on those trips. And I think that that is needed. I think we've got too many people that are focused on comfort and staying home and not taking risks and not expanding their horizons. The internet's great, but the internet is not real life.
Yeah, it's very strange. There's a German story. It's called. There's a lot of German folklore fairy tales, which are somewhat the most brutal stories you will ever read.
Like Hansel and Gretel is pretty hardcore, the
I was
original.
thinking about Hansel and Gretel, and it's one of the most profound stories about the Oedipal myth, the idea of the mother who wants to make you fat so you can't leave, so you can eat it. And I was wondering, like sometimes if we invent something and 10 years later we have an entire Oedipal generation. So it's like
Yeah.
Buka was too fat to leave the house,
Too
literally,
fat to leave. Yeah.
too fat to leave. Um, Biggest lessons you learned from your parents?
I think the biggest lessons, My mom is I just have so much respect for her and everything she did. My mom, like to give you an idea, my brother's severely dyslexic, and I grew up in this little bitty nowhere town. My mom, when she realized that my brother had a major learning disability, anyone else would have rolled over and said, "Oh God, this kid's got a learning disability. What do we do?" My mom went and started a school for dyslexic kids, and hundreds of kids went through her program that learned how to read and were able to do things and got through high school and whatever else. So for me, and my grandmother was the same way. My grandmother was the first woman in the state of Texas that was licensed to sell investments. So like they're both women that did big things, and that even though they were in a world where they weren't necessarily sure what they were doing or how the hell to make it work, like they figured it out and did stuff with it. And that to me was the biggest lesson of I always tell my kids and folks whatever, like opportunity knocks but motivation kicks down the door. So like let opportunity knock all day, I'm going to kick the door down, and yeah, I may not have it right the first time, but by God, I'm going to keep trying.
And if you would say a family motto you guys have, because like what you just described is just beautiful. One of my favorite parts of the human condition is people who take something that has a poison that is plaguing their family and is transfiguring it into a tonic that they share with the community. I think it's
Mm.
the most noble form of behavior that potentially exists. What do you feel is like a mantra or a motto that was governing your family, or something you personally took away from that guided your own ethos onwards?
I think really what I kind of learned from seeing them was that figure it out. Like nothing's gonna go the way that you kind of want, and there's never gonna be the super easy, gifted given to you thing. But there's a way to do it. And it may not be pretty, and it may not be cheap or whatever else, but if it matters to you and you can do things that help other people, just do it. You'll figure it out along the way.
Interesting. Um, what was the moment you shifted from being a civilian to being a soldier, so to say?
I mean, when you go through, the first day that you get to boot camp in the military is definitely a rude awakening because you're like, whoa, like this things just went, hardcore. But then also, when we invaded Iraq back in 2003, I was there for that, and that was when all of a sudden it was like we're we're launching missiles and we're doing things that are going to, kill people and change governments and whatever else. And that was a very I think I probably grew up and aged, 10 years in a couple of days just with that stuff because it was it was very earth. I mean, especially since my grandfathers had been in the military and World War II and whatever else, like yeah, they didn't talk much about it, but all of a sudden I understood a lot of the things that they had, seen and done and whatever else. So it was like, wow, this is real now. We're no longer just poking around in the water doing Navy things. Like we are engaged in conflict.
If by any chance we would have a time machine and you could speak to your family member, if you've been in service in the previous generation, what would you ask them or tell them?
I mean, the first thing I'd tell them was, man, you guys did so much, and I can't imagine, how scary it was, how brave they were. But other thing I'd love to just ask them is like, neither one of mine were drafted, so I would just want to know, like, well, why did you go? You didn't have to. They probably would have eventually been drafted, but both my grandfathers, they saw that there was a war going on and they went. My father's father was 16 when he went. He lied to get into the military. So it's like, you wanted to go do the thing. Why did you want to go do the thing that young?
Interesting. For somebody who has not seen war or was not on a battlefield, like what did Iraq, like if you would describe war to a civilian?
1,000 hours of total boredom for 30 seconds of absolute terror and chaos. I mean that's what it is, and unless you're one of the whoops, there's the dogs. A second.
one of the questions I often get is why do I have like my 1,000 books every leader should read on my website, and there's the first chapter is on war actually. It's my father was in a special unit and a spy, and like he always gave me those books to read when I was a child, pretty much in a way. If you would write a chapter on what you've learned in Iraq, like what do you think you would share for maybe if you think about it for your son later on as somebody who will read it with a gap later on?
I mean, I think it would be very interesting to just sort of talk about that you always only see the very top of what's actually in anything, and there's way more deeper motivations, reasons, causes, etc., that are actually driving everything. And you get to a place where you start to learn like I should widen my aperture, the camera side, like really widen the aperture because if you do that and you step back, you start to see what's actually taking place. And we like Iraq's a great example. We went there originally because there was the quote weapons of mass destruction. There was no weapons of mass destruction. There was nothing there. Saddam was, playing the game and faking it and whatever else. But that wound up turning into $1 trillion of loss and 40 plus thousand lives and et cetera. So I would really like to, kind of run back through that and recount and kind of go back over all the stuff that stood out of like everything adds up here, and it's probably not the best use of our time and resources.
Yeah, it's what is something a civilian thinks in regards to war that somebody who's seen it no longer holds as true?
I mean, you realize just how quick you can adapt to kind of any place. People think, oh man, I could never do that, and blah. No, you could. When you don't have a choice and you have to do it, you can. And the toll of what is going to show up doesn't show up then. It comes later. You can operate on little sleep and a lot of stress for a long time and do pretty well, but eventually, it will catch up with you. So, that's also a great time, when you're doing those things to also learn, like, if I don't, I think the phrase is, if you don't take care of your wellness, you will deal with your illness. And that's what a lot of people don't really get, especially as you get a little bit older in life. I'm 46 years old, staring down the barrel of 50. I was actually at a thing today, and a lady was like, "You eat really healthy, and you look like you work out and whatever else." And I told her flat out, I was said, "Yeah, because I want to be happy, healthy, fit, and mobile when I'm 60. I mean, I may get hit by a bus, can't control that, but whatever I can control, I will. And what you do now pays off 20 years down the road."
Mm. One of the things find interesting is like if we would make a movie about your life, like what was the moment where Dr. Zero Trust first showed signs of life where like I imagine you had all these unique experiences that maybe like a civilian individual won't have. What was the moment where you maybe ask yourself a question that led you to this extraordinary journey of investigation of this topic?
I can say with absolute certainty there was a moment when I was getting medically retired from the military, and I had a job offer to go work at Langley at the CIA as an analyst and do stuff for them, or I could go and do corporate cybersecurity and go down the rabbit hole and do stuff around dark web and the things that we were doing for this particular business I was going to go work for. And this guy's my witness. I actually flipped a coin because I couldn't make a decision. I was like, I don't know what to do. Either one feels like it could be great. I'm not sure which one's the right call. And I mean, I'm a Christian, so I prayed about it a little bit, and then I kind of just said, you know what? I'm just going to flip a coin and flip the coin, and it came up tails, and I went and took the corporate job.
Um, said you're a Christian. Did you meet God on any of your adventures, or had like an encounter where this was awakened in you? Because
You know,
everybody
I
says,
tell people all the time, I grew up in a Christian home. I grew up in the church and stuff like that. I didn't understand any of it until I had kids. And when I had children was when all of a sudden all that stuff that I'd been exposed to and learning about and everything else really all of a sudden made sense. And even as I've gotten older and my kids have gotten older, now all the stuff from and I'm not a hardcore Christian. I think everybody's entitled to their own beliefs and their own lives, and I love everybody equally except for the people that don't deserve it, which there's those. But I mean, I really think that you don't understand the the God thing until you are in that place where you actually have to give more of yourself, but then also accept someone for who they are. And kids for me was that thing, because before it was just me taking care of me. And then when I had kids, it's like, wait a minute, I have to, I got to love them unconditionally, but then I also have to accept all their crap and their flaws and problems and whatever else, and want to love them through that. And that was a very eye-opening time for me as a human, to be perfectly honest.
yeah, Shia LaBeouf recently, who played a couple of movies in war movies also. In like, I think one of them is, what is the tank movie called? I think it's
Oh, Fury, that's a great one.
good movie, and he delivered like crazy. And he said like in one of those interviews, it's like for him becoming a man is the moment you become responsible, not where you make a certain amount of money, but where you're responsible for other people and taking that on. However, feel that there's a part of becoming a man also has to do with the boy inside of you dying a little, like the bubble of naivety plopping. And in my time where I did counseling, it was often an encounter also with malevolence or tragedy or extreme adversity where that woke up and the bubble could not longer hold anymore. Anything that comes to your mind where you went like Morpheus and could see what the matrix really is?
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate enough to do some time as a consultant slash contractor at FBI, and I was working in the National Cybercrime Task Force, but I was in a specific area where we were looking at childhood cybercrime. And like I saw things there with what people were doing to kids and how kids were being used on the internet and stuff like that. For me, I was like, wow, evil really exists. Like it is not just something you hear about in the movies and whatever. Like there are people out there. Luckily, there's not a lot, but there are some really evil, sick people. And even doing military stuff, I hadn't seen stuff like that. But once I saw that, it was like, oh, yep, we have totally removed the veil of what life is actually like out there. Very eye-opening.
How has this changed you? Because for me, I had my father told me once a story that in the way he grew up, it was governed. My father grew up in Lebanon, and in Lebanon, there's during that time there was a lot of civil war, and there were small parties governing areas, and he was involved with one of those that sent him to Europe to raise funds for his area. But it was not like police or the level of civilization where that we have here in Berlin, for instance, where it was like civilization keeps those things in bay to some degrees, but it wasn't that case. And one of the things that really woke him up was this an incident of um, somebody being molested in their child, and they took things into their own hands. It was, I think, I don't want to call names. It was one of my family members, and they were like 12 or 13, and they had like Kalashnikovs and went to hunt that guy. And that was like really like one of those moments where his bubble popped in regards to having an encounter with something that cannot be classified any other than evil in a way. What do you think it did to you in regards to this, and how did you not grow bitter as a consequence? Because here you are still exploring also the lighter pursuits of life, like education and exchange and dialogue and other things. Because I think it's also a crossroad where you can go different ways. You can also say, if I see this, God does not exist. Otherwise, He wouldn't allow it. But somehow you picked a different part for your development.
Yeah, well, the stuff we were doing was intense enough that we were only able to do operational stuff for a week at a stretch, and then you had to take a break because the stuff you were seeing was that. I mean, we were in chat rooms and stuff like that, so it was very. I mean, it was just mind-boggling the things that you saw. But I mean, that also, as far as the side of like accepting that the evil that is out there, I'm also perfectly fine with that. There are some people that are just evil and can't be fixed. And in my opinion, those folks got to go. However they go, they got to go. And I'm a father, I'm a husband. You know, if somebody mess with my wife, my kids, like I'm okay with prison for the rest of my life. If I got to do things I got to do. And it's when you see people being traded like baseball cards, children, stuff like that, you realize like, yeah, there's things I'd be okay with, doing to another human being if it needed to happen.
Yeah, I think my father said one time to me, it's like a man needs to be able to give his life up for something if the cause arises, or take life it is if it is required, if it is necessary. And I just wonder, like my generation here, it's just so fostered to the degree where this element is completely outsourced to the state, where I feel like a certain level of fatherhood doesn't even exist here anymore. Anyway, that's another, man. You have to tell us about your experience with the dark web, because there's the civilian web, it's like the YouTube and the Instagram and a way, but it seems like you've peeked behind it. Like, tell us about this chapter, because I think many people don't even know that it exists, and I think that's
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's the internet, and that's again why, like I was saying earlier, like there's this much you see, and then there's this much that runs underneath it. I mean, it is an iceberg is a great way to look at it, but the stuff that goes on in the dark web. I mean, when you get into some forum and you see people, in former Soviet socialist republics where they're auctioning off children for sex trade, or you see them selling people's personal identification for, Bitcoin and those types of things. Or, I mean, we've even seen it where people were trading pictures from different people that had murdered other folks, just selling them. Like, oh, I killed this guy, because of X, Y, and Z, who wants a picture of his brains on the ground. And then people bid on it and buy it, stuff like that. And then, of course, all the drugs and the folks selling fentanyl on the underground and things like that. Like it was so much, call it malevolence, evil, that you're just like, wow, there's a whole market built on this. And the internet, for all of its good, there's an underbelly that is there, and it's very, very large, and it's for people that just are willing to make money off of whatever they can make money off. Like their moral compass just never existed in the first place, I think.
have you seen the first season of True Detective?
Yeah, great show.
Great show, right? I think
Yeah,
like it reminds me of what you're just describing. It's This is secret organization there that they have like these ceremonial murders of children, but it's like the way Matthew McConaughey presents this person who goes after it, and also the toll it takes on him. Like, watching
yeah,
these videos is something that profoundly impacted me. It's one of the most impactful television I've ever
that's a
watched.
great series. The season three was kind of junk, but season one and two were good.
That was no season two, if you ask me. I want to be honest. What is the My father also worked as a profiler, like for when he became a ghost afterwards. Like, when he was working in the underground, he couldn't get so many jobs, but this was one of the jobs he had. He was hunting people and like helping the police in this way. What is something about human nature that you learned from this chapter in regards to this, and how do you develop the resilience that you were able to move on from it? Because I'm very fascinated by people who max out certain traits or characteristic or virtues, and just being exposed to this, and it's I've written some books about trauma, and this is the kind of things that gives people post-traumatic stress disorder. It's like having your picture of the earth shattered and not being right, literally. And like, how did you put yourself together, and is there any story that comes to mind where you can depict your own journey in regards to how you did that? Sorry, this was a very messy
No,
question
that's
for me.
great. I mean, it's a good question. I don't mind sharing. I mean, I think for me, I've always been pretty good at kind of compartmentalizing and keeping, work and home and whatever else separate, especially when you're working in classified spaces. You have to do that. Like work stays at work and home is home and whatever else. But um, you you just get to a place where you're able to go, I'm observing, I'm seeing what's going on, I'm doing what I can to help, and I've given, I've done what I can. Other than that, like I'm just one small tiny cog in a great big machine, and that's where you go from there. And then, I mean, I think on the other side, like the if you don't have something to lean on or believe in or actually that matters to you, like I think you eventually are going to lose a bit of yourself, in those types of scenarios, And I mean, it's also interesting too because I have tons and tons of friends that are ex-military, and man, there's someone that got really severe issues and PTSD and stuff like that, and people, especially older generations, they have a huge stigma against medication. I'm fine with it. Like, if you have an issue, in my opinion, better living through science, talk to a physician and try some medication and it can help. I've been taking, antidepressant stuff for a long time because it actually works and, it makes life better. So I can't ever in my mind imagine why people look at that as like, ugh, I don't know if I want to take that. Like, no, you need it. It's okay. You take the drug, like big deal. That's what it's for. Like, why would you not? I mean, take penicillin because you have an infection. Duh. Same sort of thing.
Mm. Did you ever had like a moment where there's a favorite moment in the Bible where I think this is one of the first stories from Cain and Abel that I find interesting, where like Cain, after he looks at Abel and that Abel's more successful than him for because he makes better sacrifices. Like Cain is not able to cope with his reality and starts to blame God for his lot in a way. Having seen what you've seen, was there a moment where you and God had a little encounter in regards to just, or you and your beliefs and your values, and where you went toe to toe, and did you find something there?
I mean, I've had my times when I've prayed and talked to God and I've, waited for the answer. And that's why I still go back to I don't think I really understood that relationship until I had kids because a lot of times the answer is, I'm here for you, but it's your thing. You've put yourself there, you've decided that this is something that you want to do, you're willing to, put yourself in that spot. The only help I can give you is to be a, shoulder if you need it or someone to talk to. But that's got to be enough. And I think that's maybe a difference between just how I look at my relationship with God and everything else instead of I'm fully okay. I'm totally okay with I won't get an literal answer. The answer when I ask might just be nothing. And that nothing actually is the answer, which is kind of hard to wrap your head around.
Very interesting. I'm very interested in what people do when their faith is challenged. I think there's lots of shallow optimists. I think they're like somewhat naive. It's very easy to have a positive outlook on life if you've not seen the bottom of the iceberg.
Yeah. Yeah. If you've never seen really evil, like really bad people and the horrible things that humans do to each other, like you're not what's the saying, right? If you've never had a bad day, you don't know what a good day is.
Yeah.
So it definitely, gives you some clarity, I think.
How do you think people end up like that?
I think they usually are not willing to step back and accept reality for what it is, and that this, unfortunately, good, bad, ugly, otherwise, like this is what the world is, and this is how life is, and it's been this way since the dawn of time. I mean, since people came out of caves or wherever, like it's just what it is. And if you accept that and just understand, to me, and this is my opinion, like if you accept that and you find your very, very small role in it, and just stay within yourself, I think you're probably better off. Um, like I, I'll help wherever I can help, but I also know that there's places that my meager contribution doesn't make a lick of difference.
Okay, if we you have all the funds in the world and we can organize a task force and go to war with whatever topic you wanted to, knowing that you've seen the full iceberg, like what operation would we organize? Who do we ask for help? And who's what are we battling?
The first thing that I would do is I would mobilize, call it an international task force to scan the internet and fix all of the easy vulnerabilities and low-hanging fruit and all the things that the bad guys typically use to cause bad stuff to happen to people. I think that that would be very easy to do, and I think that that would be make a massive difference for everybody everywhere. And then, following on to that, figuring out how to prosecute or potentially eradicate the folks that are known bad actors that do things that cause all of this misery and detriment and global cost and whatever else. There's folks that are just criminals. There's folks that are bad people, and they got to go. And if it's not jail, then fling a 1,000-pound warhead downrange and problem solve that way. So, I think that there's relatively simplistic problems to this stuff, but it, like you said, it would require a lot of effort, and it would require people actually be willing to go, let's fix what we can fix, let's accept what we can't, and then where we find those two things kind of meeting in the Venn diagram of awesome, the human component of that is malicious, they got to go. And
One of the things I see you almost like a white blood cell. Is it white blood cells? These things that
yeah,
eat up the bad ones. I think you're one of those. To what degree do you think the internet is corrupted, and do you think we need to? Is this a winnable war?
I don't think it's I don't think it's a winnable war at the current scale and scope of the internet as it stands today. And I think that these AI systems, which none of them are AI, but they're marketed as AI, are only making it worse, and they're democratizing. They're doing a lot of good things, but they're also democratizing a lot of the malicious side of human nature and putting it in the, digital space. So I think it nowadays is coming down to more of a personal approach in cyber. Like if we would all take care of ourselves a bit better, then we would level up quite a bit overall. But these it drives me nuts, when number one, when people say that the bad guys only got to be right once. Like, no, that's a victim mentality. You don't just because you kicked in my front door doesn't mean you get to live in my house. I'm gonna kick the shit out of you and you're gonna leave. So that, I mean, that's we got to think about things that way. And then the other side of it is like, I can take care of me, I can take care of my family, probably do okay with it, but I can't fix everybody that won't decide that they want to be fixed. And none of the stuff in most of the space, the digital space, is exceptionally difficult. And we have plenty of research that tells us where to focus and what to do, and people still wonder, well, how do we fix the problem? It's not that hard. If the Verizon DBIR tells us for 10 years in a row that the number one avenue of compromise is bad passwords, guess what you fix? That simple. If multi-factor authentication changes login issues by a large percentage, do that.
Mm. If you would send an email out to every person in the whole world with a little brief from Dr. Zero Trust on how to use the internet in a healthy way, what would be the first 3 points you inform them about?
Move towards either enterprise browsers or Chromebooks for access to the internet because they're better than you are at of spotting phishing, and that's a technical control. And Chromebooks are great because there's no operating system, so there's not a way to get ransomed on there. That'll solve a giant problem. Like literally, you can send me ransomware on a Chromebook, it won't work. There's no OS, so life goes on. The second thing I would tell everybody is do multi-factor authentication. Is it perfect? No. Is it unbeatable? No. But is it better than what you currently have and is very, very useful in a lot of ways? Yes. And the last thing I would tell everybody is get a password manager, move towards a combination of password management and biometrics, and you're going to be way better off. Like if you do just those three things, you're making a substantial change in your security posture, and none of them are difficult.
I had a big brother. Shout out to you, Martin, if you listen. Love that guy very much. The first time I got to partying, he took me aside and in Reeperbahn in Hamburg, where it's like lots of prostitution and there's gangs. It's controlled by Hells Angels. It's like it's a rough place to go to as a teenager who has not a lot of sense, so to say. So he sat me down and informed me about all the things that I could encounter there and how to, what happens if somebody wants to start a fight. What if you do this? Don't go to that place. If somebody offers you drugs, what is like a how do you put it? A drive safely kind of kit you would give to somebody who has an online business, in this regard?
Yeah, I mean, I think the majority of them would be better off if they're not doing like development work, if they're just doing regular business stuff, like live in the cloud and use, G Cloud or O365 or something like that. Personally, I think G Cloud is a little bit better, but then you're removing a bunch of the problem space for management side, and then the policy engines up there are pretty good at taking care of. I would also say, unless you are coding or something along those lines, you don't need an Intel Pentium 5, Windows, da 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 da. Use a Chromebook, solve that problem. And then, get a password manager, like whether it's Keeper or Dashlane or whatever, get a password manager. And that's probably going to take care of 90% of your problem that you would have to deal with. And again, nothing exceptionally difficult. I mean, you could always, go bonkers and do things like, my boxes that I've got floating around my house or whatever else, but that's if you have too much time and no life.
There's a quote from Friedrich Nietzsche. He said, "Be careful when you look into the abyss."
The abyss looks back
There,
at you.
yes. Any
Great
story
book.
that
Read it.
comes to mind in regards to youth while chasing bad guys also found that people were starting to chase you in some discard.
Yeah, I mean, I've got folks that are I wouldn't say after me because there's nothing important about me, but I've got folks that have let me know that they're not happy with things that I've said or stuff that I've been involved in, and I've had weird things kind of happen at a few places, especially some because of my past government work. I've had some interesting occurrences traveling internationally at a couple places. And I mean, I know I'm a target for phishing for a variety of reasons. I also got a lot of vendors that don't like me, which is fine. That's just because I call vendors out on their shit and they don't like it.
Another great crook, I think, is Alexander Solzhenitsyn once said that a person who can say no can bring down a tyranny. I have the greatest respect for people who are say the truth, and even though it might lead to negative consequences for themselves. How do
I
you
lost a
think?
year's salary. I mean, I lost a literal year's salary because I spoke at an event and everything I said was based in data and research and facts. And I talked about CrowdStrike. And I know for a fact that the CrowdStrike PR team worked very diligently to make sure that the place I was on contract at canceled my contract because they didn't like what I said. So yeah, I lost a year's salary for saying what was factually accurate, like the truth.
There was an interview recently with Tucker Carlson, and it was, I think, there was this one person who allegedly committed suicide at OpenAI. I think the mother was on the show, and later on, Tucker asked Sam Altman if he had anything to do with the suicide. And it was a very interesting moment to see this challenge. Is anything going on with these big tech companies that is shady in regards to civilians who just use these apps, not having an idea that these guys are trespassing certain boundaries that are in the line of these kind of examples?
I mean, the thing about any of these technologies is like you're the product, right? I mean, they're using those solutions for whatever purposes they're using them for. But anytime you get access to something or you're using it, especially in today's world where all this data is being mined and leveraged for these, new systems, You're the product, and their privacy laws are comical, like they're stupid. Privacy died a decade plus ago. Like, just give up. Um, and the fact that this is a space that is motivated by money, not actually typically doing the right thing because it can help people and make them more secure. I mean, there's the old phrase, right? Money is the root of all evil. And that's where it begins and that's where it goes wrong. And that, I mean, look at like, again, not to, CrowdStrike's good people. There's plenty of good people that work at CrowdStrike, whatever, but like, just look at what happened with the CrowdStrike outage that brought down, it did basically bring down the internet for a few days. It caused $10 billion in damage. It
Can you
stopped.
tell that stories for people who are not?
Yeah, so about almost a year ago, I think CrowdStrike had an issue where their developers or somebody in the team on a Friday pushed out an update for software and something wasn't right, configuration side, whatever. But it would have been a small issue. However, because CrowdStrike is so prevalent and it's on like 40,000 servers all over the world and whatever else, when things go wrong for one, it went wrong for all. And unfortunately, a lot of those things were like Delta Airlines and banking systems and whatever else. So like airlines, but Delta went down hard for days. People were stuck. And it caused, I think the number value that's been estimated was about $10 billion globally in damage. And what's really interesting is, even though I'll give the CrowdStrike team credit for being honest and open and getting ahead of the problem, no one has called the leadership at CrowdStrike to testify in front of Congress. You know what I mean? Like, let me get this straight. You brick the internet and you reveal to our adversaries and to everyone else just how fragile the system is, and you caused billions of dollars worth of damage, and no one anywhere goes, come up to Capitol Hill and testify and tell us how this happened and how are you going to stop it in the future? Never happened. And to me, that's just like, what? We have a big problem there.
If you would be summoned tomorrow as an emergency advisor to the current White House administration, what would be the first thing you would brief them on?
The first thing I would say is that the organization CISA that you've created is functionally useless, and we're wasting taxpayer dollars on it because it literally doesn't have the title authority to even scan the internet. So why are we spending billions of dollars for this critical infrastructure security agency that can't do anything? They can advise, they can give ideas, whatever else. And then I would also say, Mr. President, we don't even have a definition for critical infrastructure in the United States or globally. So we're not going to protect stuff if we don't have a definition for it. It's a simplistic problem in my opinion, but it's something that needs to be dealt with from the ground up.
If okay, if he would ask you, for instance, like we want to, was it Reagan who declared war on drugs?
Yeah, well, Nixon did to some degree, and then it kind of went on from there. And I think ultimately it was all the way up to Reagan, where Reagan and Nancy Reagan, she was actually more influential than he was.
Yeah. If we would declare, I've just recently rewatched the movie Sound of Freedom. Have you watched that movie?
I've read the book. I haven't seen the movie.
The book's probably better, but it's about this I think it's FBI profiler who
Yeah,
uncovers
human
this
trafficking stuff.
human trafficking stuff, and it's like if you would declare war on, like, if the administration would ask you, how do we declare war on these internet child pornography rings, like how does this package would look like that we as a species leave this behind? Because I think the is there a scenario, or is this more like a parasite that will always be there in regards to the internet, not in regards to the human nature behind it?
Yeah, I mean, on the internet side, I think we could get to a place where maybe with the right controls and restrictions and authorities in place, we could probably minimize it. But there's folks that, I mean, if this is what they want to do, they'll find a way to do it, and we would be able to drive it down quite a bit, I would suggest. But part of what needs to happen too is we need to be very or much more public about when we do grab somebody or prosecute someone that's doing bad things, so that other people in their circle know, like, oh, like that's legit. I might actually wind up in jail for the rest of my life for doing these types of things. We don't do a very good job of that.
question you haven't been asked often that you should have been asked in regards to your great corpus of work? I think like some of these interviewers were like simpletons like me. I can imagine that sometimes it's the same dance routine over, particularly if I don't have a deep understanding of the topic. What's a question that you should have been asked that hasn't been conveyed to you during an interview?
Ooh, great question. Really good question. I think the thing that I'd always like for people to ask is, if you were to kind of line up on what would be the Cunningham master plan for fixing some of these problems, which thing would you fix first? Because usually it's, I've got my own Machiavellian plans, right? But I mean, like, the first thing is really the most important, I think, and that's one where we need movement, but it has to happen at the executive level, and there has to be more accountability, and there has to be discomfort with the people at the top of the food chain. That's what no one wants to talk about. In the US, we have a massive problem with this. So I'm not sure exactly how familiar y'all are over on the European side with how our government runs, but we have 400 plus people that are elected by the US populace to govern us. Um, do you know how many of those people of 400 have any understanding or degrees in technology? You want to guess the number?
Tell me.
Two.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's where it's problematic for me because we're more technical. We're having new technologies come along all the time, more risk, more digital, more, and we still stay with this same thing. Like, how in God's name are we ever going to fix the problem when the people that are legislating and requirements and et cetera, have no idea how this stuff works? And they're not doing anything of much value. I read their legislation all the time. I usually laugh at it because it's like, we're going to do this. And then you sit there as a technologist going, that's not how it works. It doesn't matter what you say, it just isn't doable. So why are you wasting time doing it that way? And that's the problem, is they don't understand it. I don't know anything about, physics, or I don't know much about educating children or some of the legal stuff that they deal with, or medical science, but I'm not writing legislation around it. And if I did, I would sure as heck make sure I understood what the heck it was.
I'm a CEO of a tech company too, and I'm a non-technical person. I talked today to my developer, senior developer, Bilal. Shout out to you. I can sometimes see in his eyes that I'm stupid in regards to this. I can just see that what I've just asked, like remind. I got once great advice from a teacher. He said, Daniel, the less you talk, the smaller the chance that people reveal, like that you reveal to the public that you're a moron. And it's like it's like great advice. And it's like when I think of these governments, there, it seems that there's not a lot of like technical leaders represented there. And it's interesting because you wrote a book also on how not to lead. Can you tell the story on that book? And
That was I loved writing that book because it was very, very cathartic. How not to lead, and the whole premise of the book was, having worked as a consultant and in the military and in government spaces and classified agencies and whatever, like, I've been exposed to many, many, many people that were leaders that should have never, ever been in charge of anything. So my point in that book was, after looking around, because I'm like you, I read constantly. Like, I'm either reading or listening to Audible books or whatever. I didn't find a book that was like, where's the one that says, don't do this because this is a really stupid way to be in charge? So I wrote the book on it. And it was, if nothing else, it was cathartic for me because I got to get off a lot of stuff off my chest about all the jerks I'd worked for.
I'm sure, like I'm in one of those categories for many stories of people I've worked with in regards to. Let me tell you about what he did. What was the content of the book? If we somebody, uh, if you want to give just one nugget, what is one thing you want to have people take away from it, from reading it in a way? Because my ventures are very much around like connecting the reader to the author that I showed you about last time. I don't want to make this a pitch for my product, but what is something you would like to if you're like a zippy on the top of that book, like speaking some extra advice or something, this is the one thing you need to take away from this book. What would be on the how to not lead?
Yeah, so one of the biggest ones that I really think is applicable is what I wrote. I wrote a whole chapter on what we in the military and we call mushroom farming. And people are like, what the hell do you mean by mushroom farming? Well, how do you grow mushrooms? You keep them in the dark and you throw shit on them, and that's literally how they grow, right? People in leadership do this all the time. They'll have you ever been one of those places where the leadership like there's a problem or there's something coming down, and what do? They don't let everybody know what's going on. They just keep giving out little pieces of information, but it's just enough to kind of feed the rumor mill, and it's not enough to actually deal with the problem. And honestly, I learned about this writing the book. Fungi, they have a substrate. They communicate, not talking, but they do communicate. Well, when you lead that way, what happens? You get rumors, you get people talking behind your back, you get all those other things. Whereas it would be way better to not be a mushroom farmer and open the door and let the light in and not shovel shit on people and just go, look, here's what's up. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what I need from you. And if you have questions, come talk to me. Rather than, oh, this could be bad. Like we would let them know just enough to kind of keep them moving forward. It just doesn't work right. And then the other one is, I think in my research, what I found was the kind of triangle of awesome. If you're trying to get there as a person in charge, it's time, trust, and respect. If you can manage those things up and down, you're doing it right. Because I can never get my time back. Like that's the only commodity that we deal with that is finite in nature. It's gone. So if you mess with my time, you're literally stealing from me. If you take my trust and you don't return it, we're done. And then finally, like the respect thing. If you don't respect me, why should I respect you? And it's a very, people say, "Oh, I respect my employees." Do you really? Like, are you actually treating them with respect? And I don't mean cowing to people, and I don't mean being a weak leader or whatever. I mean just being respectful. And part of respect is telling people the truth, treating them like they're smart enough to understand what the hell you're talking about.
I watched yesterday a great movie. It's I somehow got into the habit of watching movies way too late at night. I start them at like 12, and then I'm at the 3 o'clock in the morning. And I watched Master and Commander yesterday.
Great, great flick. Love it.
Love that movie. And it's about what's the name of the actor again? I forgot it.
Russell Crowe.
Russell Crowe. But one of my favorite things from is how he walks around on the ship and how he has a connection with every single person on the ship, knows their story, why they're here, and make sure that they are seen. What do you feel is your how do you earn the trust of the people you are leading, or what is like your idea on trust, since this is an important word for you?
I mean, for me, and this is just, my personal side plus some research because of writing a book on leadership, like you get trust by giving it, but you also it's a commodity that is not necessarily interchangeable. And what I mean by that is if I'm putting things in front of you, I trust you to take care of your problems and do your job and whatever else, and you're not doing that, well, then that's not reciprocal. There's not trust there. That's a one-way flow. And if that's the case, the best way that I can actually probably grow that trust relationship is to get down there, engage with you, and figure out how I can help you solve that problem or complete that task or whatever else. But there's a tangent to this that other people in your organization are going to see that. And at the end of the day, you might gain more of their trust by getting rid of that person that is not worthy of trust. I mean, there are bad apples and they do poison the whole barrel. So, there's a back and forth that has to happen here, but trust is not a one-way flow. And it doesn't come just because of who you are. I don't care if you're retired admiral, PhD, Navy SEAL, blah, 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 whatever else. Cool, great for you. You're awesome. I'm glad you've done all that stuff. That doesn't mean I trust you. Doesn't mean I respect you. Like you've got to earn that from me. And that comes with, the work, the time, being down there on the floor doing the stuff.
feel one of the signs of wisdom is to the ability to differentiate between good and bad and making choices, right? It's like that's like for me, that's a crucial part of leadership is where you see the vision or the objective, and you're able to make a decision whether that particular person can contribute to the mission going into this direction. How do you separate the good and bad apples in regards to your own decision making process? You know, because I feel as a founder, many companies fail for personnel decisions, particularly in the earlier stages. And one of the scenes I'm always thinking about is have you read Shackleton's Endurance?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, I love that book. And there's like one scene, for instance, where there's this toxic, nihilistic communication breaks out, and they are very sensitive to spotting these points of doubts and interfering with it because they know that if the crew falls apart, everybody dies. What is like for you a mechanism you use to spot the bad apples and either turn them around, pull the worm out, or isolate them and throw them away?
I mean, a lot of times with people that are bad apples, if you're able to keep them, not necessarily isolated, but just off the slightly off the reservation, if you will. Usually they're narcissistic, and usually they don't do too well when they're not engaged in conflict and causing problems and whatever. They'll probably get rid of themselves. I'm always a big fan, and I even practice this at home with family. Like, I will give you enough rope to hang yourself, and that's going to be your problem. If you say that I'm going to do this thing, whatever else, okay, cool, go do it. But if you don't, you're the one responsible for that failure. And how much more rope do I keep giving you? If you're dangling from the end of it, we pretty much know how this is going to go. So I just think for me that makes a lot of sense.
Can this also be applicable to the civilian sector? Because for me, it's a lot of my upbringing was if there's another Dr. Zero Trust, is my father because he's that person has growing up in this environment. He has the reason why we had a special relationship because he's became a child soldier, 13, like had all these sent to another country and was pretty much persecuted by his government afterwards because he changed his religion, fell in love with my mother, and so he didn't trust anybody but me. And one of the books that he gave me was The Count of Monte Cristo, which is another one of my great books. There's another person who trusts pretty much no one but his own mission. Is your philosophy applicable to the civilian sector also in regards to spotting these bad apples and the metaphor you make with giving them enough rope? How do you deal with this as you have this wisdom of bad people? How do you deal with this in your civilian life, so to say?
I mean, it's the same way. Like I think if you I don't know if you're a fan like Jocko Willink or any of those folks, but like the whole thing about like what's the standard? And you either adhere to the standard and the standard's applicable to everyone, or it's not a standard. It's not fluctuating. It's not something that changes based on your role or your level or your education or whatever. You either achieve the standard or you don't. And if you can't keep up, then you are to the Shackelford thing, like you're the guy paddling backwards when everyone else is paddling the same direction. And you don't need to be there. That I think in the corporate world, that's what stands out way too often is we'll tolerate people being dead weight for way too long. It's not like go off and have, sniper Fridays where you're just getting rid of people right and left, but you do have to be willing to make those decisions that this person's got to go. There's another really good phrase that I learned from a guy that I knew in the Navy that I think I try and live by. It's you deserve what you tolerate. And if you let people mistreat you, if you let people disrespect you, things like that, you're the one that's actually deserving of it. They're just being themselves. And if you tolerate it, you get what you expect.
Yeah, it's like during my investigation when I wrote all my books about like human nature, particularly counseling, there was a term I liked. It was enablement. It was like in psychotherapists usually when you have somebody embodying like full blown toxic behavior, there's usually another party in their orbit who's not challenging them to get rid of that particular part. It can be a mother, it can be a lover, it can be a coworker, and one of the things, great things I think anybody can do is make a commitment to be best for the best part of themselves and be completely incompatible with the worst of themselves. Because if you're not, that part seems to be growing. If that makes any sense. Anyway, I am digressing. Cyber warfare. That's a hell of a title.
It was a fun, it was a cool book. I like that one. And what's been good was a lot of it was way ahead of where we are now. So it's kind of, I have friends text me, they're like, man, you were right. I'm like, yeah.
Tell us about the content of the book, and then I think I know. Do we have a hard cut? Do we have a lot of minutes?
I'm good till like 6:15.
Okay, cool. So tell us about that book briefly, and also, is it a term, bust our cherry, when somebody loses their virginity? So for me, me with my incomplete English, I'm probably this makes
No,
no
that's
sense.
correct. That is a term.
Bust our cherry in regards to what is actually going on in the world, because it's speak about the current leadership crisis. Because for me, as a person who you probably have a different understanding of what's happening in the world than me have, because I turn on the news, I'm like, is World War III happening tomorrow or is it next Tuesday? And I'm just like, so, but you must see, like, knowing the top of the iceberg. Would love to see your perspective on what's going on. So please tell us about the story of cyber warfare, the book, the content, and then I would like you to elaborate a little bit on what you see in the world right now as a, I don't like using the word prophet very much, but as a visionary who's seen some of these things um, happen before others, and also tell us where the water's heading, so to say.
Yeah,
Over
so
to
I
you.
think cyber warfare, the title of the book is Cyber Warfare, Truth, Tactics, and Strategies. And I think the most important part of that was truth, because there was lots of books out there that were on cyber whatever, but they weren't really looking at the kind of reality of what goes on in that space. And if you want to know what future state cyber warfare and conflict look like, look at Ukraine and Russia right now. That is the boilerplate of what's going to be kinetic conflict, global conflict, digital conflict for the next 100 years, especially the drone stuff and the use of robots. And that's where we're at. And if you're a fighter pilot, your days as with having a job are numbered. We're not going to need you. The warfare of the future is going to be fought with drones in mass. It's going to be fought with facial recognition and biometrics and things like that. And it's going to be fought much more distant than it is currently. Like, if you ever get to the spot where you're going to be trench warfare, a lot of the trench warfare is going to be fought with robotic mules and things like that. Like, you're not going to have hundreds of thousands of people running at each other like the movies show and they clash in and then the fight kicks off. It's going to be drones that are pre-positioned. Russia just or Ukraine did this in Russia, right? If you remember them taking out the bombers where they had the drones that were in the back of the 18 wheelers. They popped out once they got within flight range of the bombers, flew there and blew up the nuclear power bombers or the nuclear bomb bombers for Russia. First of its kind that's ever happened in history. Like, that is the future of warfare. And when you think about it, well, geopolitically, why is that the future? Well, you don't have to be a superpower now with drones and with robots and with AI and with cyber, and you can take on a superpower. Um, North Korea has built a nuclear weapons program with nothing but stolen Bitcoin infrastructure. They can't feed their people, but they can build a nuclear weapons program with stolen crypto. So, I mean, that is what warfare looks like in the very near future. And people need to understand this is where it's going and this is what you're going to face. And I think it's also worth noting, too, the cyberspace across the globe is a level playing field for battle. Like, anyone anywhere, if you have enough time and resources, Nana at home on her computer could go off and download, WikiLeaks, Vault 7 stuff and have nation state level capabilities. So that's what we're seeing, and that's where this is going. Um, the days of superpowers, especially US and Russia and China and whatever else, are going to become very muddy, very murky, because superpower is going to be something almost entirely dependent on geography and economic impact. The warfare stuff is going to be so commoditized and so subsidized and so automated that it's going to be just through the roof on the scale side of it. And that is what was very eye-opening for me, was to look at that.
For me, I'm in Berlin here. Berlin is a cultural, it's a boiler pot pretty much, like many different. It's also has the largest Palestinian population in Europe, I think, in a way. It's like can order a great shawarma here every day. But it was for me when the war started, it was quite crazy to see on the streets people calling for war in Germany. You know, it was like very interesting for me. That's particularly the floor being loaded, where with our history that we had. How do you see the dangers of individuals affecting large scale populist opinions creating in a way? Because for me it was very scary that like maybe one person can start a global war. That's what goes through my mind in regards to like provocation, but also mass propaganda where we can like pull a domino stone quicker maybe than 100 years ago or something.
Yeah, I mean, TikTok is a propaganda engine, and unfortunately, in the U.S., we're allowing it to just run rampant. I mean, we're making deals with TikTok and ByteDance and whatever else, and it's an influence engine. It's a propaganda machine. It's a dopamine hit crack factory, and as far as people not being aware of it, it's boiling the frog. If you put the frog in hot water, it'll jump out, but if you let it in there cold water and just keep cranking it up slowly over time frog doesn't know it's boiled. I mean, that's where we're at. And this also goes back to that point I was making as far as the commoditization and democratization of conflict globally via cyber. I don't ever even have to potentially drop a missile or send a weaponized drone if I can get your populace itself to actually, like you're saying, rise up based on some BS premise or crazy weird story we can put out and get enough people interested to cause conflict. And you guys in Germany or Europe, honestly, are probably luckier than we are in the U.S. because in the U.S., every third person's got guns. So, if you get the right crazy person with the right weapon, it can be a really bad day really quickly. Like, there's a reason I don't go to stadiums, I don't go to movie theaters, I don't go to marches, stuff like that, because all it takes is one nut to kick things off. And nowadays, with the internet, we're manufacturing crazy people. I mean, we're manufacturing them, but it's such a scope and scale that it's terrifying.
I think nuclear physicists have this doomsday clock on how close we are to
Close to midnight.
how close to midnight do you think we are?
I mean, I think we're probably a quarter of an hour away, but the reality of it is, if you step back for a second, you go, okay, well, that doesn't sound too bad. People talk about cyber Pearl Harbor. So cyber Pearl Harbor is not really something I'm concerned about. Pearl Harbor was one day that will go down in infamy, was the famous quote. And thousands of people died, billions of dollars in infrastructure damage, whatever else. The way that cyber has been used over the last X number of years, it's been larger than the scale as far as financial and economic damages than Pearl Harbor and 9/11 ever were. And we're starting to see human beings die from cyber conflicts. Last year in the United States, over 100 Americans died, physically died, because their hospitals or their care facilities were under ransomware attack and people were unable to get treatment. Some of those were dialysis facilities, and dying from kidney failure is a miserable way to die. So it's bonkers when you think about this, that it's going on the way that it's going on, and people are literally dying, and folks are still saying, "Well, I'm not sure if like cyber is actually the thing, or cyber is kinetic, or cyber affects humans." It does, and it's going to continue to get um, more erratic and more damaging as more of these things take place.
So while we are using browsing YouTube, there's a secret war right now going on that we have no idea about.
Yeah, it's right there underneath the surface. I mean, every nation on the planet is engaged in it. Every person is transiting that place. I think I read somewhere recently that cyber crime, if it was an economy, would be the fifth largest economy on the planet. So, like, that's crazy. I mean, it's big.
No, you're soon have to go. I'd like to move to the last part of the interview. Maybe we do this another time in person
Yeah,
when we
sure, for sure.
go full overboard. I call this the Alexandrian questionnaire. It's in inspiration for what we're building, what I showed you earlier. It's about words. Just it's a rapid fire, just what comes to your mind, and after that we fade out. If you don't want to answer those, it's completely fine. You good?
Yeah.
Okay. What's your favorite question?
My favorite question?
Yes.
Good question. Gosh. Favorite question is probably what's your favorite food? Because I like eating.
Your favorite word?
Favorite word. Shenanigans.
Good one. Least favorite word?
Least favorite word. I don't even like the word weak. I don't like that word at all.
A book that changed your life?
The end of the world is just the beginning.
From who?
Peter, I can't remember his last name. If you look it up on Amazon, it's The End of the World is Just the Beginning. I've read all his stuff. There's another one called The Absent Superpower. Great stuff. If you're into geopolitics and things like that, yeah.
A quote you strive to live by?
If not me, then who?
I like that. If you
And
could
then
resurrect,
the other one I would throw in there is a phrase I learned from my grandparents called "I'm third." God first, the other person second. I'm third.
third, I like that. If you could resurrect three people from history to add to your personal board of advisors, who would they be and what would you ask them?
I would always love to talk to Genghis Khan. Um, I mean, I think it's interesting because you talk about stuff that happened in World War II and whatever else, and wait, folks, Genghis Khan did so much across the globe that the number of people that they killed literally changed the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Like, I would just want to know, like, tell me, man, what was the plan here? What, where are you going with this?
My favorite Genghis Khan fact is that if you're from Asia, there's a certain number of percentage that you're one of his descendants.
I think it's like
Just
1 in 10,000 or something.
yeah, something like this. Just because he had so many children, it's
Yeah,
like yeah,
it's
interesting.
amazing he had time to do anything.
Well, who are the other two that you would think of?
I would also, I think it'd be very cool to talk to Julius Caesar, just because it's like, you sit on top of the largest empire in history. How does all that play out? Um, and I think it would be very interesting to talk to, I think it was Eric the Red, that was one of the first Vikings that actually came to America before anyone else ever came here, before Columbus, and just kind of ask the question of like, you didn't think it was a good place to hang out, you know? You-
An author that comes to your mind when you think of the word punchable.
Ooh, punchable. Hmm. Marco Rubio, Eric Trump. I mean,
Eric Trump.
I don't know that they actually wrote their books, but they have books.
I hate ghostwriting with a passion. So it's like it's some of the things where I don't want to get into that. It's like anybody who hasn't written that book feels a tragedy to put your name on it. Um, to consider a video message to the current world leaders, if they would listen to this particular part of the interview, what would be the first point you would be making?
Being safe and secure in a digital world is a fundamental human right, and we owe it to ourselves and the future generations to make the space better and more secure.
Mm. Come from a long lineage of people who also did service. If you would receive through a miracle an advisory letter from all of your ancestors, what do you think it would say?
I hope it would say that they're proud to some degree, but I think it would also say like, and it's probably more a reflection of myself is like, what else you got? Like you're still got time. You're still relatively, young and healthy and whatever. Like you can keep going. And we're here. We're cheering for you. But go do something. Make it matter. You haven't done anything substantial yet. Go do something that matters.
Two more questions, and then we're done. If you would equip your tomb or your gravestone with another avatar of yourself, and it would have like one message that would be played if people from the future would visit you, what would be something that you would describe to have this message say? It's almost like an outer seed scroll sort of thing.
I think I would be great if it was something along the lines of like, I did what I could with what I had for the time I was given, and I hope that's enough.
I think that's a beautiful way to end. Last question. Don't have to answer this. If post-mortem you meet God and you guys sit down, maybe on a couch like the one I have behind, and you watch your personal highlight reel of you being a human being, what do you think is the moment that makes him particularly proud?
Um, I think or I hope it would be not necessarily a moment, but I think it would be sitting there and saying and God looking at it and going, you know what? I put some opportunities in front of you and you did what I hoped you would do, and that's good enough. I would be totally okay with that.
Tell us, for the people who are listening, um, you were so generous with your story, your advice, and also with your support for me in this podcast. What is something we can do for you, for the people who are listening, and where can we find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I've got the podcast on Spotify is Dr. Zero Trust and that time, and I'm also on YouTube as well. And then, I mean, the thing I think you could do is try and help each other as best you can in being safer and more secure online. Because, like I say, I think in today's world, it's on us to do it for ourselves. And if you don't know what you're doing, or you know someone that doesn't know what they're doing, find a way to, assist. That's how this actually gets better over time.
Chase, thanks so much for making room for this long conversation. To everybody who listened, I have a special place in my heart for people who make room for this, listening to these dialogues. I'm looking forward to you dropping in the next episode. Chase, again, thanks so much for showing up.
You ask great questions. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much.